Okay, we're going to begin our study of Social Studies Chapter 7 today, and this will be on Hebrews and Judaism. You'll see it's laid out the same way as the other chapters, so as you scroll through, you'll have the songs at the beginning and then each lesson with the videos incorporated in them. So I encourage you to go back, as always, and listen to and watch the songs because they will help you learn the material. So lesson 1 is divided into 2 parts, and we're going to do part A today. So this is the early Hebrews, and let me warn you, there are several videos that go along with this chapter. So we'll be in chapter 7 for probably about 3 weeks. You should have watched this video, I believe, on Friday. So our big idea today. Originally, desert nomads, remember, people who roam around, they're not settled. The Hebrews established a great kingdom called Israel. Our main ideas: Abraham and Moses led the Hebrews to Canaan and to a new religion. And some women in Hebrew society made great contributions to their history. Now you're probably wondering why we are skipping from chapter 4 all the way to chapter 7. We're going to come back and get chapters 5 and 6, which will be India and China. But it just flows better to go ahead and talk about the Hebrews after Egypt. So our time frame, as a review, Mesopotamia, that was established somewhere around 3500 BC, or BCE, the new way of saying it. Sumerians and cuneiform, around 3200 BC. If you're familiar with the story of Noah and the flood, that would have been around 2298 BC. Notice we're counting down to the year 0. Abraham would have been from 1946 down to 1771 BC. And then Moses and the Exodus around 1446 BC. So that just kind of gives you a time perspective. So here is a rendition of the Tower of Babel. And there is a video that you're going to come back and watch to explain the Tower of Babel. So please come back and watch that. All right, so Abraham and Moses. Accounts of the Hebrews describe the Hebrews' early history and the laws of Judaism, which is what the Hebrew religion is called. The Hebrew Bible traces the Hebrews all the way back to Abraham, who was told by God, notice it's capitalized, this is a monotheistic religion, one God, so was told by God to settle in Mesopotamia in the city of Ur, which is present-day Iraq. The Hebrews of the biblical times lived in the Middle East in a strip of land between ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. And this land was known as Canaan. It would later be called Israel. All right, so God, according to the Hebrew Bible, spoke to Abraham and made a covenant with him, which is basically a promise. And in this covenant, God promised to bless Abraham and his descendants, as long as Abraham promised that he and his family would always be faithful to the one true God. And again, this is monotheism, belief in one God. So here's our time period, 1946 to 1771 BC, would have been when Abraham lived. So we talked about the covenant, and this was where God promised Abraham that he would be the father of many nations. Now, Let's think about that for a second. To be the father of many nations, he would have to have many sons. Well, he was married to Sarah. Actually, Sarah at the beginning, but Sarah. And she was barren, meaning she didn't think she could have children. So she had a slave named Hagar, and she viewed it as Hagar belonged to her, so Hagar's children would be hers as well. So she offered Hagar to Abraham to bear a child. Well, as soon as this all took about, Hagar began to look upon Sarah with contempt. So then Sarah began to treat Hagar harshly. So harshly, in fact, that Hagar fled into the desert. But an angel ordered Hagar to go back to Abraham and Sarah. And the angel told her that her son would be named Ishmael. And this means wild son. All right, so let's get back to this father of many nations thing. This would just be one nation. Many nations. So remember, Sarah thought that she was barren? Well, God, we call this, O ye of little faith, because God fulfilled his promise to Abraham. Sarah gave birth to Isaac when she was at age 90. So 90 years old, she gave birth to Isaac, which is who the covenant will be fulfilled through. So God's covenant was fulfilled through Isaac, not Ishmael. So Sarah told Abraham, finally, to just send Hagar and Ishmael away after she says that she witnessed them mistreating her son Isaac. All right, this is important in the fact that several religions come from this one covenant. We have Isaac's descendants who become the 12 tribes of Israel. Remember, through who God's covenant was fulfilled through. They are called God's chosen people, the Jews. They practice Judaism, and out of Judaism, we get Christianity. The only separating fact here is the Jews are still waiting on their Messiah today, and the Christians believe that Jesus was the Messiah, who, by the way, was a Jew. And we will deal with Christianity more when we get to ancient Rome in the spring. Then we have Hagar's son, Ishmael. His descendants were also 12 rulers, but they are not God's chosen people. They are the Arabs, to whom Muhammad eventually was born. He developed the religion of Islam. He is the founder of Islam. And that religion, those that practice it, are called Muslims. So you can kind of see how all this clicks and fits together. And it all goes back to Abraham and the covenant that he made with God. So go back and listen to the song, Father Abraham. So we're going to skip forward here now. So about 500 years after Abraham died, there was a famine that struck Canaan. Remember, this is the promised land. The Hebrews ended up going to Egypt due to this famine, where they could eat, and they lived well. And this caused the Pharaoh in Egypt great concern due to their growing population. He thought that maybe they would rise up and take over Egypt. So he instead made the Hebrews slaves to keep them from taking over Egypt. Well, along comes a leader named Moses. Now you're going to go back and watch some videos to kind of fill in the blanks here. I'm giving you the broad story, but the videos will help fill in timelines. So you will learn that Moses grew up as an Egyptian. Go back and watch the video when that day comes and I tell you to watch it. So, but Moses is going to go back to Egypt and he is going to demand that the Pharaoh free his people. Set my people free. Well, the Pharaoh is going to refuse time and time again, and there are going to be plagues that are going to occur, that are sent by God, which are going to frighten the Pharaoh, to the point that the Pharaoh is finally going to say, okay, take your people and go. So Moses' people are eventually going to be released, and this begins the Exodus out of Egypt. Exodus out of Egypt. They're going to leave Egypt in slavery. God then gave Moses the 10 Commandments on Mount Sinai by which to live by. And again, you're going to see all these blanks filled in the videos you're going to watch. And these 10 Commandments included worshiping only God and valuing human life. The Hebrews finally reached Canaan, the Promised Land, and settled there in small communities as the Israelites. You will find out, though, that Moses disobeyed God and he was not allowed into the Promised Land. Here's a song you need to come back and listen to. Here is a depiction of when Moses went up on Mount Sinai and what the Hebrews who were left behind did. They melted down all the gold and created a golden calf. And you'll find out in the 10 Commandments, that's a no-no. Make no idol before me. So you'll see in the video what happens if you don't know that story. Here's another song you need to come back and listen to. And this video, or this map, shows some possible routes of both Abraham and Moses, with Abraham being in green. Remember, he was from Ur in Mesopotamia. He possibly traveled along the Euphrates River and then down to Damascus and into Jericho. And then the red depicts the possible route of Moses as he led the Hebrews out of slavery up to Mount Sinai, eventually wandering around in the wilderness, and then finally to Canaan. Here's a little video you're going to watch about Ruth and Naomi, which leads us into how women were treated in Hebrew society. So in Hebrew society, they were governed by men. So like the men would be the head of government, the house, of everything. And the women had few rights. So in other words, the women had to, if you were a child, you had to obey your father. And as you grew and got married, you were to obey your husband. They also had arranged marriages. So ladies, you couldn't choose your own husband. A woman could not inherit property unless she had no brothers. But this doesn't mean that women were treated poorly, just the opposite of that in the Hebrew faith. Some of the women, such as Queen Esther, Judge Deborah, and Miriam, who was the sister of Moses, made great contributions to society. And then Ruth and Naomi, which you'll see in the video that you're going to go back and watch, which was right before this slide, they were seen as examples of how women should behave. Ruth was devoted to her mother-in-law, and you will see that in the video. Okay, so this ends lesson 7.1a. There are 4 videos that will be watched following this slide in the days to come. Don't watch them today. Go back and watch the other videos that I pointed out in the lesson. I have them in order as to how you should watch them. So please make sure you're watching the correct video each day that I assign it. The one video, the 10 Commandments, will be split up into several days because it's 84 minutes long. Okay? So, again, this is the end of lesson 7.1a. When we pick up next time with a lesson,